The massive dome of the Galactic Council stretched high above the assembled representatives, its crystalline walls pulsing with the soft glow of 1,000 different worlds. The air hummed with the chatter of dozens of alien species, each speaking, in their own tongue through universal translators that turned the chamber into a symphony of strange sounds. Admiral Vextar, of the Korthax Empire, sat hunched over his datapad, his insect-like body clicking with what passed for laughter among his kind. His forearms moved in rapid gestures as he read the latest transmission from the human homeworld called Earth. The Admiral's compound eyes gleamed with malicious amusement as he stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the council floor. "Fellow delegates," he called out, his voice cutting through the ambient noise like a blade. "I have received the most entertaining news of the cycle." The chamber gradually fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focused on the Korthax Admiral. Some floated in containment fields, others slithered across the floor, and a few existed as pure energy patterns that shimmered in the air. "The humans," Vextar continued, savoring each word, "those primitive bipeds from the third rock orbiting a yellow dwarf star, have submitted their application for council membership." A ripple of interest passed through the assembly. The Zephyrian Collective's representative, a being of crackling blue energy contained within a geometric framework, pulsed brighter. The flesh beings who only recently achieved faster-than-light travel? How presumptuous. Vextar's mandibles clicked faster. It gets better. For their mandatory military assessment, they claim they will send their finest vessel to demonstrate their capabilities. He paused for dramatic effect. One ship. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds before the chamber erupted in laughter. The sound was unlike anything heard on any single world. A cacophony of alien mirth that included buzzing, chirping, electronic squeals, and sounds that had no earthly equivalent. The Alteran delegate, a being made entirely of living crystal that refracted light into beautiful patterns, chimed with what could only be described as musical laughter. "One ship? Surely this is a translation error. Perhaps they mean one fleet," suggested the coordinator from the Gellan systems, its blob-like form rippling with what passed for amusement among its kind. Though even our smallest member world, the mining colonies of Zerion, sent 300 vessels for their assessment, Vextar shook his head, his antenna twitching with glee. "No translation error. I have confirmed the message 3 times. One ship. A single vessel. They expect to demonstrate the military might of an entire species with one craft." The laughter intensified. The Meridian Hive Mind's representative, a swarm of interconnected insect-like creatures, buzzed in perfect harmony. "Our scouts reported that their largest warships are barely 2 kilometers in length. Primitive chemical propulsion, crude energy weapons. What could they possibly hope to achieve?" "Entertainment value," wheezed the Gellan coordinator. "I propose we broadcast this assessment galaxy-wide. The viewing fees alone could fund our next territorial expansion." Around the chamber, betting pools began forming spontaneously. The Korthax contingent wagered that the human ship would be destroyed within the first minute of combat trials. The Zephyrians, known for their advanced technology, gave it 30 seconds before catastrophic failure. The peaceful Altarans, ever optimistic, bet on 2 minutes of survival. "What do we know of their combat doctrine?" asked the representative from the Thrak Dominion, a being that resembled a living shadow with glowing red eyes. Admiral Vextar consulted his datapad again. "According to our intelligence reports, they favor projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their tactics are crude. They seem to prefer direct assault over sophisticated strategy." "How refreshingly primitive," commented the Zephyrian. "It will be like watching ancient history unfold." But not everyone in the chamber was amused. In the far corner, the delegate from the Outer Rim territories, a scarred veteran named Commander Zalketh, remained silent. His people had fought against unknown threats in the galaxy's darkest regions, and he had learned never to underestimate any species that had survived long enough to reach the stars. Thousands of light years away, in the cold depths of space far from any inhabited system, something ancient stirred, The void around a massive shape began to shimmer as dormant engines awakened for the first time in decades. Hull plating that had been forged in the fires of 100 different worlds began to warm as power flowed through systems that had been dreaming in the dark. Back on the monitoring station Harmony 7, Commander Lee Jun-ho sat in his observation chair, watching the sensor readings with growing concern. The Korean officer had been stationed at this remote outpost for 5 years, monitoring deep space for any signs of unusual activity. "Sir," whispered his aide, Lieutenant Park Sung-min, leaning close to avoid being overheard by the other technicians. "The energy signature we're detecting, it's massive, larger than anything in our databases." Lee's fingers drummed nervously on his armrest as he studied the readouts. "How massive?" "Comparable to a small moon, sir, but it's moving." "And the energy pattern?" Park paused, his face pale. "It's not like anything we've ever seen. Not Korthax, not Zephyrian, not any known technology." The commander leaned forward, his experienced eyes scanning the data streams. Something was approaching the test coordinates, something that registered on their sensors like a gravitational anomaly with engines. But what troubled him most was the energy signature's age. The readings suggested technology that had been active for centuries, maybe longer. "Send a coded message to the Council," Lee ordered quietly. "Tell them we have an unknown contact approaching the assessment zone, and recommend they increase the distance of their observation platforms." As his aide hurried to comply, Lee stared at the massive blip on his screen and wondered what humanity had awakened in the depths of space. The galaxy was about to discover that some jokes have very serious punchlines. The first sign wasn't visual, it was the way space itself began to scream. Every sensor array across the test zone started shrieking warnings as reality twisted and bent like heated metal. The fabric of the universe bulged outward, stretching until it looked ready to snap, while emergency alarms wailed across 200 alien warships. Captain Torjon of the Meridian battlecruiser, Stormfang, gripped his command chair as his bridge shook violently. What in the seven hells is happening to our sensors? His navigation officer, a multi-armed creature from the Kepler colonies, worked frantically at her console. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions. Something big is about to drop out of hyperspace, and I mean really big." The rift opened like a wound in space itself, edges crackling with energy that made the nearby stars flicker. What emerged from that tear in reality defied every law of physics the assembled aliens thought they understood. The hyperspace portal stretched wider and wider until it seemed like the entire test zone might be swallowed by the gaping hole in space-time. Then it came through. The ship that materialized wasn't just large, it was a moving mountain of metal that seemed to go on forever. The test fleet, which moments before had looked like an impressive display of galactic military might, suddenly appeared to be nothing more than a collection of toys scattered around a sleeping giant. "Sweet mother of the void," breathed Captain Torjon, his voice barely a whisper. His bridge crew stared in stunned silence at the main viewer, where the impossible sight filled their entire screen and kept going. The hull was like nothing any of them had ever seen. It wasn't built, it looked grown, as if the ship had evolved over centuries of constant warfare. Patches of different metals created a crazy quilt pattern across its surface. Here, the gleaming silver of Alteran crystal steel. There, the dark carbon weave favored by the outer rim colonies. Sections of unknown alloys that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Materials that didn't appear in any galactic database. Battle scars covered every surface like a road map of endless conflict. Plasma burns that had melted and reformed the hull plating. Impact craters from kinetic weapons that had somehow been repaired with even stronger materials. Energy weapon scoring that told stories of battles fought in the deep black, where no one would ever know their names. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, voice cracking with disbelief. "I'm reading approximately 15 kilometers in length. Mass readings they're impossible. This thing has the gravitational signature of a small moon." Across the test zone, similar scenes played out on every alien bridge. The Korthax battle group, known for their discipline, watched in stunned silence as their formations scattered to avoid being pulled into the massive ship's gravity well. The Zephyrian energy beings flickered frantically as they tried to comprehend what their sensors were telling them. On the monitoring station, Harmony 7, Commander Lee Jun-ho felt his blood turn to ice water. "Park, are you getting this?" Lieutenant Park Sung-min nodded numbly, his face pale as death. "The energy readings are off every scale we have. This thing has been active for... Sir, the power core signatures suggest this ship has been running continuously for over 800 years. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the laughter had died completely. Every delegate stared at their viewing screens in absolute silence. The massive ship hung in space like a predator that had just awakened, its presence so overwhelming that it seemed to bend space around it. Admiral Vextar's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. His compound eyes reflected the image of the impossible vessel as his tactical brain tried to process what he was seeing. "That's not a ship," he whispered. "That's a battle station. No, that's a mobile fortress. No, that's..." He trailed off, unable to find words. The Zephyrian representative's energy field flickered weakly. The power requirements alone should be impossible. How do they maintain structural integrity at that size? Slowly, as the assembled fleets adjusted their sensors and focused their telescopes, details became visible on the massive hull. Ancient markings worn smooth by centuries of cosmic dust and radiation began to resolve into readable text. The script was primitive by galactic standards, but unmistakably human. The name appeared letter by faded letter. Dauntless. On the bridge of that impossible ship, Captain Kim Min-ho stood with his arms crossed behind his back, watching the chaos unfold through the main view screen. His bridge was a mixture of technologies from across the galaxy, systems jury-rigged and rebuilt so many times that no two control panels looked alike. Battle damage had been repaired with whatever materials were available, creating a functional, but patchwork command center that told its own story of survival against impossible odds. His crew moved around him with the quiet efficiency of people who had long since stopped counting the battles they'd fought. 43 souls, some human, some not, all bound together by years of shared danger and mutual dependence. They worked their stations with casual competence, monitoring the alien fleet's panicked responses with the detached interest of professionals watching amateurs. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo from the tactical station, his voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had seen too many battles to be impressed by mere numbers. "The test fleet is trying to establish formation. Standard defensive pattern 7 looks like." Min-ho nodded slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion. The scars on his jaw, souvenirs from a boarding action in the Kepler Nebula, caught the bridge lighting as he studied the enemy formation. "Textbook response, no improvisation, no real combat experience. They're treating this like a training exercise," observed Chief Petty Officer Nam Woo-jin from the engineering station. "Clean formations, proper spacing, everything by the manual." "Which manual?" asked Sergeant Major Choi Da-eun with dry humor. "We've fought most of their species at one point or another. The Korthax favor direct assault, the Zephyrians prefer energy warfare, and the Meridians like to swarm." Min-ho's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Then we'll give them a demonstration they'll remember. Hyun-woo, what's our status?" "All systems green, Captain. Weapons powered down, shields at minimum, engines running quiet. We're reading their active scans, but they can't penetrate our hull to get meaningful data." The captain nodded and turned to face the main screen, where over 200 of the galaxy's finest warships were scrambling to form battle lines against his single vessel. The sight should have been intimidating, but Kim Min-ho had faced worse odds with a smaller crew and lived to tell about it. "Then we'll be gentle with them," he said quietly. "Signal the fleet. Tell them we're ready to begin whenever they are." The attack began exactly as every military academy in the galaxy taught. It should. Admiral Vextar's flagship fired the opening salvo, a brilliant lance of superheated plasma that could have melted through a kilometer of solid steel. Within seconds, the entire test fleet opened fire in perfect coordination. 200 ships unleashed hell itself upon the massive human vessel. Energy beams bright enough to blind unprotected eyes cut through space like deadly rainbows. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed streaked toward their target in streams of metal death. Particle cannons fired clouds of supercharged atoms that could strip the hull off any known vessel. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon in half. The Dauntless began to move. What happened next broke every law of physics the galaxy thought it understood. The massive ship didn't accelerate like normal vessels, building speed gradually as its engines fought against inertia. Instead, it seemed to flow through space like water finding its way around rocks in a stream. Captain Torjan watched in disbelief as his targeting computer lost lock. What the hell? My gunners had perfect targeting solutions. His weapons officer, a four-armed Kepler native, worked frantically at her controls. Sir, the target just moved, but our sensors show no engine. Burn no thruster activity. It's like it just decided to be somewhere else. Across the test zone, similar conversations erupted on every alien bridge. Weapons that should have struck dead center passed harmlessly through empty space. The massive human ship seemed to dance. Between the incoming fire, its enormous bulk sliding sideways up-down around obstacles that existed only in dimensions the alien crews couldn't perceive. Impossible, Admiral Vextar breathed, his mandibles clicking rapidly in confusion. Nothing that large should move like that. It's 15 kilometers long. The structural stresses alone should tear it apart. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Sergeant Major Choi Da-yoon coordinated the defensive systems with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this dance 1,000 times before. Her scarred hands moved across controls that had been rebuilt so many times they looked more like art than technology. Engine crew, she called into her headset. Initiate drift pattern 7. Make it look lazy, like we're struggling with the ship's mass. Deep in the ship's engineering sections, Chief Petty Officer Nam Woo-jin grinned as he watched his instruments. Copy that, Sergeant Major, giving them a show. The Dauntless suddenly seemed to lumber through space, its graceful movements becoming sluggish and predictable. To the alien fleet, it looked like their target was finally succumbing to the laws of physics, its massive bulk becoming a liability as it struggled to avoid their coordinated fire. Shields to forward arc only, Da-yoon continued. Make them think we're taking damage. Bright flashes erupted along the ship's hull as energy shields absorbed incoming fire, but only in specific locations. To the watching aliens, it appeared as if their weapons were finally finding their mark, overwhelming the human ship's defenses section by section. The alien fleet pressed their advantage, closing in for the kill. Korthak's battlecruisers moved into flanking positions while Zephyrian energy ships prepared to deliver the final blow. The Meridian swarm fighters buzzed around the massive target like angry insects, adding their firepower to the growing storm. That's when the Dauntless stopped playing. But it didn't fire weapons. Instead, Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo at the tactical station began what could only be described as a masterclass in space combat that would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Beginning Phase 2, he announced calmly, his fingers dancing across controls that responded to his touch like extensions of his own nervous system. The massive ship suddenly accelerated not forward or backward, but in a direction that seemed to exist outside normal space. Using precise engine burns timed to the microsecond, combined with gravitational manipulation technology that the galaxy had never seen before, the Dauntless began to herd the alien fleet like a shepherd working with particularly stubborn sheep. Captain, Torjan felt his stomach drop as his ship suddenly lurched sideways. What's happening to our engines? Sir, his engineer called out in panic. We're caught in some kind of gravitational field. It's pulling us off course, but the source isn't showing up on any of our sensors. One by one, the Council's finest warships found themselves dancing to the Dauntless's tune. Precisely placed gravitational pulses, invisible and undetectable until they struck nudged ships out of formation. Vessels that tried to fire found their targeting systems mysteriously failing as the human ship somehow interfered with their computers from impossible distances. The Zephyrian energy beings discovered their power cores fluctuating wildly as unknown. Forces played with their electrical systems. Korthak's battle cruisers found their weapons refusing to fire, safety protocols engaging for reasons their computers couldn't explain. Meridian fighters ran into invisible walls that shouldn't have existed. their swarm formations scattered like leaves in a hurricane. "This is impossible," Admiral Vextar roared, watching his carefully coordinated attack dissolve into chaos. "They're not using any technology we recognize. How are they doing this?" On the Dauntless, Park Hyun-woo worked with the focused intensity of a concert pianist performing a masterpiece. His hands moved across controls that managed systems the galaxy had never dreamed of. Technology born from 8 centuries of desperate innovation and rebuilt from the wreckage of 1,000 different battles. "Gravitational pulse to Sector 7, he called out. "Electromagnetic interference pattern delta to the Zephyrian formation, quantum entanglement disruption to the Korthax command ships." Each action was precise, surgical, designed not to destroy, but to disable. The alien ships found themselves gently but irresistibly moved into positions where they could no longer threaten each other, or the Dauntless. Their weapon systems shut down not from damage, but from safety protocols that their own computers initiated to prevent accidents. Within an hour, the entire test fleet hung powerless in space. Not a single ship had been destroyed. Not one alien life had been lost. But every vessel in the massive fleet was completely, utterly, and undeniably defeated. The silence that followed was deafening. Captain Kim Min-ho stepped forward to the communications station, his weathered face calm as he activated the galaxy-wide broadcast. His image appeared on screens across the test zone and in the council chamber, where hundreds of alien delegates stared in stunned disbelief. "This is Captain Kim Min-ho of the Earth vessel Dauntless," he said in a voice that carried the weight of 8 centuries of battles fought in the dark between stars. "We apologize for any inconvenience. Your ships are undamaged and your crews are safe. Please stand by for further instructions." The understatement of the millennium echoed across the galaxy as every military leader, political figure, and strategic analyst tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The humans hadn't just won. They had made the galaxy's finest military forces look like children playing with toys. The Galactic Council chamber exploded into chaos the moment Captain Kim's transmission ended. Delegates who moments before had been laughing at humanity's audacity now scrambled over each other, shouting questions and demands in dozens of alien languages. The universal translators worked overtime, creating a cacophony of panicked voices that echoed off the crystalline walls. Admiral Vextar slammed his 4 fists on his command console, his compound eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and rage. "This is impossible. Our intelligence report said humans were primitive. How does a species that barely achieved faster-than-light travel possess technology that makes our finest warships look like scrap metal?" The Zephyrian representative flickered frantically, its energy field cycling through colors that indicated extreme agitation. "The power signatures we detected, they're not using any known physics. Their gravitational manipulation alone should require technology we won't develop for another 1,000 years. Captain Kim's weathered face remained calm on the massive screen surrounding the chamber. The scars that crisscrossed his features told stories of battles fought in places the Council had never heard of, against enemies they couldn't imagine. His eyes, deep and haunted, carried the weight of 8 centuries spent fighting in the void between stars. "You want to know about our ship," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. The chamber fell silent, every alien delegate hanging on his words. "The Dauntless was launched 800 years ago, when our sun began to die. We were colonists, civilians mostly. Farmers, engineers, teachers. We were supposed to find a new home among the stars." On the screens, the camera pulled back to show more of the Dauntless's bridge. The command center was a patchwork of technologies from across the galaxy, systems that had been rebuilt, upgraded, and jury-rigged so many times that no 2 control panels looked alike. Battle damage had been repaired with whatever materials were available, creating a functional but chaotic workspace that told its own story. "Instead," Kim continued, "we found a galaxy at war. Not the clean, organized conflicts you know about. The real wars. The ones fought in the dark spaces between your civilized worlds, where things hunt that your scientists claim don't exist." The Alteran delegate, its crystalline form chiming softly, spoke up. "What do you mean, things that hunt?" "Our deep space. Sensors monitor all known threats." Kim's smile was grim. Your sensors can't detect what lives in the spaces between dimensions. The void hunters that feed on energy beings like your Zephyrian friends. The plague ships that carry diseases from dead civilizations. The shadow fleets that exist in parallel space and only cross over to raid and kill. A chill ran through the chamber as the implications sank in. These were threats that existed in their nightmares. In the horror stories their children told each other in the dark. We've been fighting them for 8 centuries, Kim continued. Every colony ship that disappeared without a trace, every exploration vessel that never reported back, every unexplained phenomenon at the edge of your space. We've been out there, standing between you and the darkness. Lieutenant Commander Song Ji-eun stepped into view and several delegates gasped at her appearance. Her left arm was entirely cybernetic, a masterwork of technology that incorporated systems from dozens of different worlds. Her face bore scars that spoke of battles beyond counting, and her eyes held the same haunted depth as her captain's. We've rebuilt this ship 47 times, she said matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. Every plate of hull armor has been torn away and replaced. Every system has been upgraded with technology we've salvaged, stolen, or learned from. Enemies who tried to kill us. She gestured to the patchwork bridge around them. That control panel there? Korthak's battle computer. Taken from a raider we destroyed in the Kepler Nebula. The gravitational manipulation system. We learned it from a derelict ship we found drifting in a graveyard of 10,000 vessels, all killed by something that left. No survivors to tell the tale. Chief Engineer Ryu Tai-hyun's gruff voice came over the communication system, speaking from deep within the ship's mechanical heart. She's not just a ship anymore. She's a living thing, grown from our need to survive. Every battle taught us something new. Every enemy that tried to kill us made us stronger. The camera shifted to show the engineering sections, where massive power cores hummed with energy that defied classification. Conduits and cables snaked through corridors like arteries and veins, carrying power and information through systems that had evolved rather than been designed. We've incorporated Zephyrian energy manipulation, Alteran crystal technology, even tech from species you've never heard of because they're all dead now. Tae-hyun continued. Every innovation was born from desperation, every upgrade paid for in blood, and we've never lost a battle, added Sergeant Major Choi De-yoon, her voice carrying the flat certainty of absolute truth. Not because we're invincible, but because losing meant extinction. When failure equals death, you learn to win at any cost. The council chamber remained silent as the full weight of humanity's revelation sank in. These weren't the primitive bipeds their intelligence reports had described. These were survivors of 8 centuries of warfare against threats the galaxy couldn't comprehend. Captain Kim stepped forward again, his presence commanding attention without effort. We didn't come here to join your council. We came to inform you that Earth has rebuilt itself. Our sun burns bright again, renewed by technology we learned from the ashes of 100 dead civilizations, and humanity is returning to the stars. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a single delegate moved or spoke as they processed what they were hearing. But first, Kim added quietly, his voice carrying across the chamber like a whisper of doom, you needed to understand what one human ship could do. Because the Dauntless isn't our military. We're not your conquerors or your enemies. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. We're your guardians, whether you want us or not. For 8 centuries, we've been the thin line between your civilized worlds and the chaos that exists in the spaces you're afraid to explore. Every nightmare that crawls out of the dark between stars has had to get through us first. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about the galaxy, about the threats they faced, about their own security, was suddenly called into question. The question now, Captain Kim concluded, is what happens next. The truth hit the Galactic Council like a meteor strike to the face. For long moments, the massive chamber remained absolutely silent, the weight of Captain Kim's revelation crushing down on every delegate present. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as hundreds of alien minds struggled to process what they had just learned. Admiral Vextar was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. His forearms shook as he gripped his command console, mandibles clicking in a rapid pattern that indicated extreme distress among his kind. "You're saying," he began, then stopped, swallowed, and tried again. "You're saying you've been out there alone? One ship, one crew, fighting threats we've never even encountered?" Captain Kim nodded slowly, the movement carrying the weight of 8 centuries of warfare. "The void hunters that prey on energy beings like your Zephyrian friends? We've been holding them at bay for 3 centuries. Those creatures exist in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on pure energy. Your people would be a feast to them." The Zephyrian representative's energy field flickered frantically, cycling through colors that indicated terror. "Impossible. Our deep space sensors would detect any such threats." "Your sensors can't detect what exists outside normal space," replied Lieutenant Commander Song Ji-eun, stepping forward. Her cybernetic arm whirred softly as she gestured toward the tactical displays. "We learned that the hard way when they first attacked us near the Horsehead Nebula. Lost 200 crew members before we figured out how to fight something that could phase in and out of reality." Captain Kim continued, his voice steady but haunted. "The plague ships that devastated the Outer Rim colonies 15 years ago? Your history books say it was a natural disaster, some kind of cosmic radiation. We stopped those ships before they could reach your core worlds, but not before they had already released their payload on the frontier colonies." On the Dauntless Bridge, Master Sergeant Yoon Sora moved to the tactical station, her fingers dancing across controls that had been rebuilt and upgraded countless times. The main display came alive with battle reports, tactical analyses, and star charts showing conflicts that had raged in the empty spaces between known systems. "Every red dot on this map represents a battle we've fought," she said matter-of-factly, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had seen too much death. "Fights against things your nightmares couldn't imagine. Wars that lasted decades in places so remote that no one would ever know they happened." The display showed hundreds of red dots scattered across the galaxy's outer rim, each one representing conflicts that had kept the civilized world safe while they slept in blissful ignorance. "We've been dying out here," Sora continued, zooming in on specific battle sites. "One crew, one ship holding back the dark. Sometimes we'd go years without seeing another friendly face. Sometimes crew members would die, and we couldn't even give them proper burials because we were too busy fighting for our lives." The tactical display shifted to show the Dauntless itself, cross-sections revealing the ship's internal structure. Every deck bore the scars of battle, hasty repairs, and constant modification. Entire sections had been rebuilt using salvaged materials from dozens of different worlds. "But Earth is strong again now," Sora added, her voice carrying a note of hope that hadn't been there before. "The new fleet will arrive within the year." The Zephyrian representative flickered nervously, its energy pattern showing deep anxiety. "How many ships in this new fleet?" Captain Kim's smile was grim, the expression of a man who had seen the future and found it both promising and terrifying. "Just like today, we're sending one ship at a time. But there will be 1,000 ships like the Dauntless, each one crewed by people who learned to fight in the deep black. Each one carrying 8 centuries of hard-won experience." The galaxy's most powerful military commanders felt a chill run through their beings. 1,000 ships like the one that had just made their entire test fleet look like children playing with toys. The implications were staggering. "Each ship will be different," added Chief Engineer Ryu Taehyun over the comm system. "Every vessel built from the lessons we learned out here, some specialized for fighting energy beings, others designed to hunt plague ships, still others equipped to battle things that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Admiral Vextar's compound eyes reflected the tactical displays as he tried to comprehend the scope of what he was seeing. "You're talking about a fleet that could dominate the entire galaxy." "We're not asking for membership in your council," Kim replied, his voice carrying quiet authority. "We're informing you that humanity has arrived. You can welcome us as allies, or you can stand aside while we do what we've always done. Protect the galaxy from threats it doesn't even know exist." The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, chambers, and energy fields. This wasn't a negotiation or a request for acceptance. This was a statement of fact, delivered by beings who had transcended the need for approval through 8 centuries of survival against impossible odds. Chief Petty Officer Nam Woo-jin's voice suddenly crackled over the comm from the engine room, urgent and professional. "Captain, we're receiving distress signals from the Epsilon sector. Multiple sources, looks like void hunters again. They're attacking the mining colonies." Captain Kim Min-ho turned to his crew with the weary expression of a man who had fought this war for far too long. The weight of command, of responsibility, of being humanity's sword and shield in the darkness, showed clearly on his scarred features. "Set course for Epsilon sector," he ordered, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone who had given similar orders thousands of times before. Time to get back to work. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing the massive ship for another battle in humanity's endless war. As the Dauntless began to turn away from the Council fleet, its engines building to hyperdrive levels, Captain Kim activated the galaxy-wide broadcast one final time. His weathered face appeared on screens across known space from the Council chamber to the smallest frontier outpost. When he spoke, his words carried the promise of a guardian and the warning of a protector who had grown tired of being ignored. "The universe is vast and full of terrors," he said simply. "But as long as humanity draws breath, nothing will harm the innocent on our watch." The Dauntless has returned to her patrol. The massive ship's hyperdrive engaged with a flash of light that seemed to bend space around it. Reality twisted and flexed as the impossible vessel vanished into the void, leaving behind only the memory of its presence and the promise of its return. The Council members sat in stunned silence for long minutes, finally understanding that they had not been evaluating Earth's military capabilities. They had been receiving humanity's mercy. Admiral Vextar was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "We laughed at them. We actually laughed." The Zephyrian representative flickered, weakly. "They could have destroyed us all. Instead, they disabled our weapons and left us unharmed." "Because they're not conquerors," said Commander Zalketh from the Outer Rim, the scarred veteran who had remained silent throughout the demonstration. "They're guardians. And we just learned that we've been sleeping safely for centuries only, because they were standing watch in the dark." From that day forward, the galaxy looked toward the stars with different eyes. They knew that somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, humanity patrolled the void, fighting battles that kept nightmares at bay, and they would sleep safer knowing that the Guardians were still on watch. The end.